I don't know why, but it really creams my apples when a wrestling pay-per-view uses a theme song with the same name. To me, a pay-per-view becomes more memorable just because of that fact, especially if it's a banger of a song. A pay-per-view that comes to mind straight away when I think about this example is actually probably the most recent one as well, which is No Mercy from 2016. No Mercy. So good. When starting writing for Impetus, I created a little fun challenge and rule for myself. Every second pay-per-view would have to be named after my favorite songs or a reference to a favorite band of mine, and that's exactly what I've been doing for over 110 episodes. When starting writing for Impetus, I wanted to do that exact same thing. I wanted to name a pay-per-view after a great song. So, as a result, I created a fun challenge for myself. Every second pay-per-view would have to be named after my favorite songs, or at least a reference to one of my favorite bands. And that's exactly what I've been doing for the last 110 plus episodes. So the first pay-per-view that I actually wrote for was called Hellbound, and that's a song by the legendary band known as Pantera. Despite creating multiple bangers in their multiple decades of existence, this song and the entire Reinventing the Steel album of Pantera is one of my favorites. To the Pain is an awesome track by my favorite band for many years known as Nonpoint. Their style has always screamed wrestling. It's always had such a wrestling vibe, so much so that multiple songs of theirs have actually been used by multiple wrestling companies. Now, the beginning of To the Pain is the perfect start to the opening of a pay-per-view. After this video, go and listen to the beginning of that song specifically and just tell me that you don't hear the words, "And now, insert wrestling company presents To the Pain." Awesome. Another band that has been promoted through wrestling is a band called Skillet, and it can't be much of a surprise once you hear them. To be honest, a lot of my favorite bands actually came from WWE while I was growing up, and Skillet was one of them. I've always gone up and down on my liking towards Skillet, but Unleashed is a great song off of a decent album, and it's probably their best in my opinion. Skindred is an amazing band, and you can right off if you don't think the same thing. Just like Nonpoint's To the Pain, all I can hear at the beginning of Skindred's song Pressure is that same introduction. Now, I didn't think there'd be a band that could top Nonpoint. I didn't think there'd be a band that I'd like more than Nonpoint, but if there is, it's Head PE. Now, I've talked about them quite a lot actually, especially their political snippets that they put in their songs. Their song Raise Hell is not only a great name for a pay-per-view, but a banger of a tune off of their amazing album Only in America. And my most recent song named pay-per-view is Hunt You Down, one of my favorite Saliva songs of all time. If you don't know who Saliva is, are you really a true wrestling fan at this point? I mean, you should know who Saliva is. You should know who Saliva. So there you go, they're the explanations of my pay-per-view names, but Sammy, what about the other pay-per-views in between them? I hear the two of you that are still watching this video ask. Well, these have some meaning behind them as well, all referencing my time spent in wrestling. Impulse was the name of my first pay-per-view that I wrote for when I was a kid, like 15 or something. When I started writing Impetus again, like properly in this format, this was my default pay-per-view name. That was the first one that came into my mind, and since then it's become my biggest pay-per-view of Impetus. Not that I need to explain, but Rebellion is a shout out to the faction that I was a part of in wrestling, known as R before K, the Rebels Before Kings. Supremacy is a callback to one of the best factions in Australian history, although now I actually think about it, there's probably only one reason for that, and it's probably just down to the fact that they have an awesome theme song called Supremacy by the band Muse. That is a freaking tune. Before R Before K, I actually called myself the king of Australian pro wrestling. Original concept, I know. During the annoying promos of Sammy Falcon, Sammy would always claim to reign supreme over the Australian wrestling business. So Reign Supreme is a little shout out to the early days of my wrestling career. Insurgency was another faction that existed in my early days of professional wrestling, and one that I actually became an honorary member of for one night. The group of Geelong-based rookies took over the shows and then faded very quickly into obscurity in like a matter of months, but I still remember what could have been, and I'll always support the idea of rebellion. So there you have it. I just thought I'd let you all in on the little secret, the rules I gave myself with the pay-per-view names. I do want to say that I am aware that if I were to own a wrestling company in physical reality form, I should probably have a yearly pay-per-view schedule, like having certain pay-per-views coming up on certain dates. But fuck it, every wrestling company does that. It's another way for Impetus to be different, to be unique. B, I'm completely aware that if it was real life, you have to go through these copyright laws, trademarks, and all that crap, licensing, blah, 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 blah. Settle down, Mr. Big Shot Lawyer. Okay, this is all just fantasy. It's fine. C, I have Impulse as a repeated pay per view, as well as the anniversary shows that I intend on keeping on writing for. So, to limit the amount of sequential shows that would happen every year could actually end up heightening the hype around them, as it would be a rarer sight to see specific things take place on these very rare shows that you see numerous times. Basically, I don't want to do what WWE have done with Hell in a Cell and Money in the Bank, making a pay-per-view out of it every year and a specific time schedule for it. Do you get me? D, I like referencing my wrestling career and favorite songs. Sue me. It allows me to vent my wrestling journey as I progress through the episodes a little bit more. Plus, it's just vitalizing for me to come up with new names for my pay-per-views as opposed to, reciting the same ones. I enjoy the time spending going, maybe I should name this song as my pay-per-view. What's another reference of my career that I can call back to? Just stuff like that. I have more references to my favorite bands and songs and my wrestling career as a whole coming up in the future. Not just in the pay-per-view names, but, references in my stories as well in the episodes. So stay tuned for that and everything else in the future.